Hi, I'm Dom Griffin, I'm a film critic, and you're watching The Armchair Auteur. This is an ongoing video series I do where we talk about new movies, old movies, screenplay analysis, that sort of thing. So if you like movies and film culture, and you like to see people pick those things apart, please consider subscribing. Today, I'm going to be reviewing Nicolas Jarecki's new film, Crisis, starring Gary Oldman, Evangeline Lilly, and Armie Hammer. Right up front, I want to say that this video is a straightforward review of the movie Crisis, which was released to VOD this past Friday. But it is also going to be me sort of talking about some other things about the movie and addressing the controversies around Armie Hammer recently, because I kind of want to have a bit of a conversation about critical bias and about how media narratives can affect the film's reception and things of that nature. I'm going to add timestamps below, so if you just want my thoughts on the movie Crisis and the movie Crisis alone, you can skip ahead to that and then dip out. Totally cool with that. But I do hope you'll stay for the larger conversation. So first, some background. Last month I reviewed a movie called Run, Hide, Fight on the channel. The video kind of blew up a lot more than I anticipated it blowing up, largely because the review received a lot of attention from people who liked the film and support the film and felt like most of the negative reviews about the film were basically just political bias and not just genuine feelings about the film. I didn't help matters much by making some dumb jokes about Ben Shapiro in the video. Ben Shapiro's Daily Wire acquired and distributed the film. I do not like them at all, and I didn't ultimately like the film, even though I had some positive things to say about it. If you're interested, that video is linked below, and if you want to go through the huge catacomb of comments, you'll see a lot of people sort of impugning my abilities as a critic and me trying to defend myself, and hopefully you'll kind of see my personal thoughts about engaging with that sort of thing, with the idea of critical bias and all that type of stuff. Like, if you're into that, there's tons of that to go explore. But the ordeal of having an entire month spent with my phone constantly giving me notifications from strangers who hate me for a 7-minute video I put on YouTube, it made me a little bit more hyper aware of people's relationship with what they consider to be critical bias, and also what it means for a film reviewer to be reviewing films that often feature or are created by people they find to be personally distasteful. For instance, a lot of folks repeatedly tried to say that I just didn't like the movie because I don't like Ben Shapiro, and they also said that I probably like movies made by Harvey Weinstein or Woody Allen. First of all, fuck Harvey Weinstein. Second of all, I have linked the last time I reviewed a Woody Allen movie below in the description on Letterboxd. That's a whole different thing. Like, I'm not sitting here like pretending Woody Allen is cool by omission or something like that. But I do tend to, in my videos, bring up when a movie features someone who has like been canceled, or someone who's mired in controversy, or someone that I think many of my viewers might find antithetical to their personal taste in films. Just because I think a lot of people want to know, like, oh, this guy that I fucking hate, who I found out is a rapist, is in this movie? Cool, I don't want to watch it. I am not necessarily always like that, but I do know that some people who watch reviews want to know those things, which is why I put them in my videos. It's not like for fun. I've said multiple times on the channel before, I'm not much of a stickler for canceling creatives. I hate Mel Gibson. I think he's a terrible person. I've reviewed 3 Mel Gibson movies on the channel since starting it, and I gave all of them positive marks because I still, sort of like seeing him in movies for whatever reason, and I think he's still talented, I don't know, and that's like something I gotta kind of work through myself, but like, I put those things in, I mention those things because for some people, it's a bigger deal, and I respect that. That brings us to Crisis, the low-key crime thriller drama about the opioid epidemic in this country that happens to prominently feature Armie Hammer, an actor mired in controversy recently for, among other things, private messages leaking revealing that he is a philanderer with cannibal tendencies who casually confessed to sexual assault. It's a lot, so I'll link an explainer below. As I record this review, the film has a 39% critic score on RT and nearly double that in audience score. Pretty much all coverage of the film is exclusively tethered to the fact that Armie Hammer, in the middle of the biggest PR morass of his entire career, is starring in a movie literally called Crisis. But does the film have merit outside of its controversy? So for those of you who just want to see the review, the movie itself. Crisis is the sort of sprawling, star-studded ensemble drama that used to be pretty common, here focusing primarily on 3 protagonists. Hammer, as an undercover agent trying to bring down an international drug ring trafficking oxy and fentanyl across the Canadian border into the States. Gary Oldman, as a professor and research scientist at a crossroads when pressed to sign off on a new drug meant to replace OxyContin. And Evangeline Lilly as an architect and a former opioid addict herself whose son has gone missing. Each of their stories has a slightly different tone, ranging from propulsive and terse to meditative and pensive, but the overall effect of daisy-chaining these disparate narratives together obviously calls to mind Steven Soderbergh's 2000 film Traffic, where Soderbergh in that picture was a little more freewheeling stylistically, severing the separate portraits with color-grade-coded dividing lines and a harsher, more affected grit. Jarecki, who also avails himself quite nicely on screen as the partner of Hammer's character, keeps things more muted, a cold blue-collar palette reminiscent of Michael Mann. It provides more verisimilitude to the proceedings, keeping them from feeling so much like genre and more like docudrama. It works particularly well for Lilly's corner of the film, which begins like a prestige TV pilot and slowly transforms into something more harrowing as her search brings her closer to Hammer's lane. But this format does, at times, abandon Oldman's arc on an island unto itself, even though the underpinnings of his story are so inexorably entwined with the pervasive defeatist feeling that looms over the other two-thirds of the film. If Crisis has any drawbacks, it's that its sturdy dramaturgy feels a little bit too staid, with a reserved tone that might have functioned better in a miniseries format where these three angles could be more fleshed out and, perhaps, alongside an even more prismatic view of this larger complex network of systemic failings. We see how the establishment pharmaceutical companies get away scot-free, and we see how our law enforcement apparatus is not set up or designed to truly defeat the problem, but the film would definitely have benefited from more of the boots-on-the-ground perspective Lilly's character provides, by showing us how this epidemic ravages a wider array of citizens and how other socioeconomic factors go hand in hand with the intricacies of addiction. As it stands, it's a slow-burn thriller populated by such a palpable sense of dread and doomerism that its cynical conclusion feels as frustrating as the real-world issues it's seeking to dramatize. Hopefully, that lack of catharsis drives viewers to be more aware of what's going on in the world around them, but as a movie, it's hard not to feel disappointed by the film's lackluster final act, even if the overall picture it paints feels both valid and timely. Near uniformly strong performances, a strange and discomforting sense of forward momentum, and, most importantly, the great Greg Kinnear getting a paycheck, what's not to like? I wouldn't go out of my way to watch Crisis, but I do give it a solid recommendation. I thought it was a pretty good movie. So why is it striking out so hard with critics? Well, there's the argument to be made that even if the film wasn't so tied to Hammer's current crisis, it wasn't on track to light the world on fire to begin with. This is the sort of understated and mid-budgeted drama that just doesn't click in the mainstream anymore, unless it's dragged out into shorter installments on a streaming service, then all of a sudden it's more palatable. But Hammer himself, despite getting numerous chances at stardom, was not exactly a box office boon before all of this came out. He's tall and good-looking and comes from money, but he has basically never led a particularly successful film. In a recent review for Vulture of Ben Wheatley's remake of Rebecca that Hammer starred in for Netflix, film critic Angelica Bastian wrote, poor Armie Hammer. Who told him the lie that being white, tall, and rich-looking was enough to establish a career in Hollywood? Hammer has never excited me. Both his choice of films and what he does with his appearances tend to bore, if they register at all. I don't agree with her at all. Like, yes, most of the leading man roles Hammer has taken have been a little bland, but I find his supporting work in movies like Sorry to Bother You and Free Fire to be pretty exceptional, and I've always wanted to see him branch out more into the Brad Pitt character actor trapped in a hunk's body paradigm. But I must admit, I found his performance in this movie to be exactly the kind of bore she described, something I have never felt about his work before. I get what he's going for here, but the kind of turn he delivers could have been done better by any number of other leading men. It's just not his strong suit. Do I now feel that way about his performance because this new knowledge about his personal life has ruined him for me on screen? Or, and this may sound awful, is his recent uninspired work making it easier for people to want to cancel him? For example, Gary Oldman is also in this movie, and just starred in Mank recently. Gary Oldman is a pretty celebrated actor to the point that people still make memes about his versatility, but Oldman allegedly choked his wife and beat her with a phone in front of his children, and still won an Oscar for putting on a fat suit impersonating Churchill. There's a new documentary out about Woody Allen that is finally taking traction in the mainstream beyond the usual people who had already long since written him off, but this wider sea change has been concurrent with him completely falling off and being further removed from making anything watchable than he's been in his entire career. Hey, they also finally came for fake feminist Joss Whedon recently, and it's not a surprise to me that it's finally happening at a time in his career where his new output is worse than ever. Maybe I'm just a cynic, but I have a hard time believing so many folks would be standing with Ray Fisher and supporting the Snyder Cut if Whedon's version of the Justice League was any good. Hell, if it made tons of money, his cringy fetishized Batgirl movie probably would be on HBO Max as we speak. Basically, you did what you want when you pop. I don't want to turn this into a larger discussion about cancel culture because I don't really believe in the concept of cancel culture. Like, most of the people that get canceled continue to work, continue to prosper, continue to be rich. Who gives a fuck about them? But when it comes to the larger discourse around when an artist is deemed cancelable, when someone is considered by a certain portion of the mainstream to no longer be tenable, I find it fascinating that there always seems to be a bit of a dovetail between their quality of work and what they have been accused of doing. As I've said, I'm no stickler for this. I am not so good at not watching things with people that are bad. I know it's a thing I should probably work on more. I'm aware of that about myself. But beyond me as an individual, I do think, as a culture, we're more likely to exalt people we know to be awful if what they create is so good that we, consciously or not, value it more than the people they have hurt. And that's pretty fucked up to think about. Because it could mean maybe Crisis is not getting bad reviews because people canceled Armie Hammer, but if Crisis happened to house Armie Hammer's best screen performance ever, like say Casey Affleck in Manchester by the Sea, perhaps the larger narrative would be about that and not the things he's done in his personal life. And that's kind of messed up to think about. I don't know where to go from here, honestly. First off, I think Crisis is pretty good, and if you want a new movie to watch on VOD, you should check it out. It's pretty solid. I think it's worthwhile. But when it comes to this other thing, the sense of what happens to famous people when we find out terrible things about them, like do we keep watching them, do we keep supporting them financially or otherwise, we probably should make a better effort to better analyze our biases about that, because there are tons of people who have not been fully mainstream canceled that we still know terrible things about, and we let it slide more often when they continue to put out things that we like. And that's somewhat hypocritical. So for you, if that's something you do, maybe think about it the next time. Like, wow, do I give the same energy to some director or some actor or some star who I just found out something terrible about as someone that I like, who I knew something terrible about, and then ignored conveniently because I like the stuff they kept putting out? Like, maybe that's a conversation people should be having with themselves. I don't know. It's not really my place. But given the reception of this movie and the entire ordeal I went through with Run, Hide, Fight, I just felt like it was something I wanted to talk out with you guys, and I'd be open to your thoughts below in the comments. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe. Hit the little bell icon to get notifications when I put out new videos. And I hope everyone's doing well, staying safe, being good to yourselves and each other, and wearing your masks. I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Bye.